best way that I can describe what it was like, what it's like for me to write now is that if anybody's ever tried to remember somebody's name and you can't, you're trying to remember somebody's name and you can't. And so you forget about it and about, you know, and all of a sudden in the middle of the night or the next day or 2 hours later or whatever, that name pops into your head. And I think it's your unconscious is working on the problem. One of the things that I did is with the Muppet Christmas Carols, first I you know, obviously I read the original book, I read the screenplay. I love the Muppets. I have a long history with the Muppets, so I know those characters pretty well. And basically I gave myself time to think about it a little bit. And then I went out and I sat down to write the first song. This is not a long story, but just basically, just gave it up to my higher power. You know, I said, "Big amigo, this, you know what we're supposed to do here. There's you know, there's a song to be written. We know that Scrooge is walking down the road. We see his feet when he comes out of his house. We see his feet, and as he goes by these little Muppet characters, they seem to become colder. So I said, you know, when you have a decent idea, let me know. And I picked up a Lawrence Block novel, Great Bloody Mystery, and I started reading that. And I was sitting out in the park with my little tape recorder reading. And about 3 pages in, I set it down and I went, okay, he's walking. Ba-da-bum, bum, 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 bum. When a cold wind blows, it chills you to the bone. But there's nothing in nature that freezes your heart like years of being alone. It paints you with indifference like a lady paints with rouge. But the worst of the worst, the most hated and cursed is the one that we call Scrooge. Oh, and it poured out of me.
Amazing.
I couldn't write it down fast enough. And I'm just I'm a big believer in looking at what you're about to do. That is a creative process, and giving your unconscious time to work on it. Because just like remembering your name, when you're not thinking about it, the name pops out. For me, you know, I allow that whatever that instinct is, whatever that inspiration is. I mean, God knows, maybe it's all the songwriters that came before that said, look, it's too embarrassing to watch this little guy struggle. Let's give him some lines.
Well, you've done amazingly. I did read somewhere that your very favorite song that you ever wrote was, of course, Rainbow Connection from the Muppet Movie.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, and I had no idea that it would have the kind of life that it's had with so many people recording it. I remember Willie Nelson and I did a duet of it, and I remember sitting across from Willie and just thinking, how do you get here? You know, well, part of the way you get here is the genius of Jim Henson. And I think that all of us who were lucky enough to work with Jim had that amazing kind of, there's an osmosis of kindness and clarity and discipline and that ability to remain childlike in playing at it instead of working at it so hard. I mean, for all the, you know, when I was hired, the first thing I ever did with Jim was a project called Emmett Otter's Jugman Christmas. And that went really well. So he'd asked me to write the songs for the Muppet Movie, which I did. I brought in Kenny Asher. And I remember having a meeting about the film and where the songs were going to go and what the story was about, them all getting together like a Hope Crosby road picture going to LA to become superstars and all. And I walked to the car with Jim to his car. And I said, you know, Jim, we won't surprise you with this, but this is a big deal. This is the Muppets' first movie, and I understand it. So I'll let you hear the songs as we're working on them. And he said, oh, that's not necessary. You know, I'll hear them in the recording studio. And it just, I mean, it spoke volumes about the kind of man he was, trusting his choices, you know.
Yeah, he was an amazing talent for sure. I mean, you've been known for so many fantastic projects. I remember growing up with you through the 70s with Old Fashioned Love Song, with the Carpenters, We Only Just Begun, with Rainy Days and Mondays. So what you're telling me is that they were all written through the fog of drugs and alcohol.
Well, no. What I'm saying is that they were not written through the fog. First of all, you're talking about the very early part of my career. Alcoholism is a progressive disease. You know, so the fact is, in the 70s, when I was having all that success and having, you know, way too much fun, the fact is that I was deeply devoted to the work I was doing. When I started hitting the road, I was out on the road, and all of a sudden I'm spending all that time out there and getting all kinds of attention. You know, it's amazing what your ego can do for you. It can all of a sudden, I'm Mr. Big Shot here and all. And you look at, there's the footage in the documentary that it's hard for me to watch because I'm on like Merv Griffin, and I'm so loaded and so arrogant, and so the dead eyes, and just but this sort of, I'm just fantastic,
Well,
and it's hard.
you certainly weren't alone. I mean, so many creatives during that period were doing exactly the same.
Oh, of course, exactly. But the thing is, when the party was over, and for a long time, it was not a party. For a long time, it was my medicine. I mean, so I was just trying to stay alive, trying to stay afloat, as they say. But what happened, and I don't talk about the organization, that has given me the gifts of sobriety. It's one of our,
Yeah, I
one
know
of
that.
our traditions is, but if you're at home listening and you're wondering about where the hell to go, pick up your phone book if you have one and check out right at the very front. You'll find them in the A's. And the fact is that they gave me my life back, and a way to live my life that was just accepting about what was going on, and I think the fact is, a way to live authentically.
Yeah,
First of all, just not feeling like I was in the way, but feeling like I'd never been a really more useful. As
yeah,
long as I talk to another alcoholic, and incidentally, that is just magic to have somebody come in and do for you what they did, what you did to get in the life I had today. Was I had to turn to somebody and say, you know what? I
help.
don't know what I'm doing. I'm scared to death, and I need
Yeah,
help.
yeah, you had to
And
be
that,
vulnerable.
oh, you have to be vulnerable, but you have to be honest at your most vulnerable time. And nobody wants to admit that they've just totally blown it. But
Yeah,
it's the disease and all. And the fact is that elegance of kindness that I got in the rooms when I was turning to other alcoholics, sober alcoholics, and said I was in trouble. They come out of the woodwork to help.
yeah,
And it's
it's
still
a
the
great
best feeling in the
community.
world.
Absolutely. Paul, just on the 70s songs, because I'd like to play, and then I just want to move to your most recent work, if that's okay.
Oh, of course.
Of all of those 70s songs that you wrote, and one after another they came out, and one was better than the next, which was your favorite? I mean, I personally loved Old Fashioned Love Song and Let Me Be the One. Can you just pick one and kind of walk me through what was happening for you in writing it?
Well, again, Noah's a gift, and some of the biggest things in my life I didn't want to do. Roger Nichols and I were writing together, and his music and my lyrics. We were writing every day and getting cuts like crazy, but no singles. We never heard anything of ours on the radio. Maybe an album cut on an easy listening station. But in the midst of this, uh, there was a wonderful, wonderful lyricist actually named Tony Asher. And Tony Asher had a job writing a bank commercial. And he went skiing and he broke his hand. He broke the hand that he writes with. He called Roger and he said, Roger, I'm on pain pills. I'm all loopy. I'm supposed to do this commercial. I recommended you and Paul for it. And I said to Roger, I don't want to write a bank commercial. He said, well, there's a creative fee. I said, let's write this bank commercial. We wrote the bank commercial. It was going to show a young couple getting married, and the ceremony, the kiss, riding off into the sunset at the end. It's going to say, you've got a long way to go. We'd like to help you get there. The Crocker Bank. That was the only pitch in it. The rest of it was just a song.
Uh-huh.
So when Roger and I sat down, he wrote a melody, and in that afternoon, he wrote the melody, and I wrote the lyrics. And all of a sudden, that with me singing it, it was showing all over. The commercial was airing. We had hung on to, the publishing was at A&M, so we expanded it into a full song. I never believed that, just in case anybody wanted an album cut or something. But I got a call we got a call from Richard Carpenter, who said, "Is there a full song?" And we went, "Yeah." Of course, We've Only Just Begun. And that changed my life. We've Only Just Begun was all of a sudden, and it's interesting because it was, at the time, and Agata Davida was, I think, the #1 album. You couldn't get further away from commercial than what Roger and I had written, and with the Carpenters. And yet it was, a huge success. And to this day, people come up to me and say, we got married to We've Only Just Begun, or to Evergreen, same thing. It's interesting. But most of the songs that I wrote with Roger, Rainy Days and Mondays, I Won't Last a Day Without You, the music is brilliant. I mean, it's Roger's music, and I would write lyrics, and he would not let me change a note. You know, it's like if it's da dee da do da da, it had to be going just da dee ba dee do do da da. I could not add a note. I was talking to myself and feeling old. So Roger became not only my writing partner, but and a lifelong friend. But Roger became my music school, and the next partner in writing was a guy named Kenny Asher. We wrote "You and Me Against the World" together. We wrote the songs for the Muppet Movie, Rainbow Connection, and we wrote most of the songs for A Star Is Born, although Evergreen is the one that I wrote with Barbra and was a big single. But you know, Woman in the Moon and Watch Closely Now and With One More Look at You, all those are Kenny Asher and I. Those guys were my music school. Because I was I was an out of work actor, you know, basically. Yeah. And so it's so the beginnings. And when Roger would go home to his girlfriend, I would just stay at the studio, and anybody that walked by my door, I would write. If you want to write, you want to write. So I wound up writing an old-fashioned love song alone. I wrote "Family of Man" for Three Dog Night with a bass player named Jack Conrad, a buddy. Craig Durgy and I wrote a song for Bobby Sherman. I mean, it was across the board, and it was.
You were on fire.
And I loved it. I loved it, you know, and I loved the work more than anything else. You know, the attention began to kind of pull at me a little bit, but yeah, it was just wonderful. And then Phantom of the Paradise came along, and some of the acting jobs that were so much fun, because that's what I started as an actor.
I know. Do you still write as easily today?
Say that again?
Do you still write as easily today?
I write. Yeah, it just pours out of me. It really does. And you know, I've been writing with a group called Portugal the Man. We have the new single, which is called "Who's Gonna Stop Me," that just came out Monday, and it's you know, it's amazing to be at this place in my life and at this age, and to have I have a documentary film that's just being released actually Friday, which is called Freak Power: The Ballad of the Bomb, and it's about Hunter Thompson running for sheriff in Aspen back in the late 60s, when the world was upside down and the police were being aggressive with all the hippies that were trying to enjoy the Aspen Valley and all. So Gustavo Santaolalla and I wrote a song. Gustavo scored the film. He and I wrote a song called Valley of Last Resort. I wrote the lyrics. And Warner's is releasing that as a single, and the documentary is amazing because there's so much so many comparatives between what was going on in Aspen in the late 60s with the hippies and all.
Oh, and we look forward to seeing that documentary.
Yeah, exactly. A wonderful documentary called Freak Power. And there's so much going on in this country right now that is so
Tell me about it.
Oh my God.
We won't start on that. That's amazing. It'll be interesting to see how we go tomorrow night. Paul, I won't, you've just been so generous with your time, and I'm so very grateful. It's been an absolute thrill for me to speak with you, and I appreciate every minute that you've given me. I won't hold you up. I've got loads to run in a special and into my show, and I'll send it all to Nancy ahead of it running. So Paul Williams, thank you so much for your time.
My great pleasure, Sandy. I appreciate it.
Please stay well, stay healthy, and keep up the writing, because your fans all over the world just love you. It must feel absolutely incredible to still be making an impact 50 years later.
The one thing we haven't talked about that is one of the greatest gifts of my life is for the last 12 years I've been president and chairman of the board of ASCAP. Yeah. You know, and it's you know, to be in the midst of the entire creative world is the greatest honor I've ever been given in my life. And also I've got to mention ASCAP, because they have been my musical home since 1972. It's a member organization. Now we're licensing everybody's music, and it's fighting for the right to make a living in streaming. So very proud of that.
You are so deserving of all the accolades, all the achievements, and we thank you so much for it, Paul Williams. Really nice to chat with you. Thanks for your time. Bye.
Bye-bye.